Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. At the Animal Alliance, we're committed to creating a future where no pet is euthanized because of overpopulation. Our spay and neuter programs are key to this goal. Visit theanimalalliance.org to learn how you can help. Your support could make a world of difference. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have a great guest. I'm so grateful for this individual. He's helping me get out of my comfort zone. Like I wouldn't believe, never thought I would necessarily step into this, but his name is Jazrome Coulter, and he has a really incredible life story. I'm not going to disclose all of it, but the thing specifically that he's helping me with is trying stand-up comedy. We did our first go of it last night, and I got like 3 laughs, so that's good, I guess. But in 5 minutes, it was kind of dry, I felt like. So anyways, but he's going to help me be better at that. I'm going to teach him a little bit of public speaking. But he has such a cool story that when I started to learn his story, I was like, man, I really want you on the podcast because I want to explore not just how you got to where you are in your journey, but what are those questions that really drive and motivate you to do everything that you're doing right now? So Jazrome, if you could go introduce yourself, like early childhood, how you ended up getting into the family that you're currently in, and moving forward to doing and living the passion that you're on right now.
My name is Jazrome Coulter, and I'm a stand-up comedian. Man, this journey has just been amazing, tragic, hard, just so emotional, but I just feel so much gratitude. I think most people kind of look at me. I'll go ahead and do the big reveal right now. I've been dealing with kidney disease for almost a decade now. And, when I tell people this story, most people don't know how to react. And they're like, how do you feel? And I was like, dude, I have so much gratitude. Like kidney disease was the best thing that happened to me. Given that it's hard, but it's kind of hard for people to process that. But I'm a true believer in, every hardship we go through is just here to kind of evolve and grow us. And I'm just going to be honest, like my childhood was really not ideal. My mom, she always suffered from addiction. She was in and out of jail for most of my life. I remember just different stages where I would be in her life, like even at the age of 4. And it's just so vividly because as a kid, you really don't understand what's going on. And I just remember at one point in my life, we had the cops actually kick down our door. And I just remember like them placing us in her lap. And, they were telling us, because our aunts lived right down the street, that you need to go stay with your aunt. And as a kid, I didn't quite understand what was going on, but it's just those vivid moments in your life where looking back, you're just kind of like, man, like this was the setup for my entirety of my like whole well-being. And so starting from that point, I was shuffled around from family member to family member. And in my family, alcoholism is, it's like a passed down genetic trait. I was actually at one point staying with my grandma, and dude, I was talking to somebody the other day, and it's just so generational, how, childhoods affect other different childhoods. Like, even after my mom has currently passed away, she went through so much. And like, as an adult, I didn't understand like the complexity of that because I was so angry at her growing up. Like I remember being bitter because at one point she actually got into it with one of her boyfriends, and I was trying to defend her. And instead of like, taking my side, she took his side. And then I was locked up in like a mental institution for 6 months. And it was like the craziest thing. Like, I'm not going to get too depth of that, but I actually put it in like one of my bits, and like holding on to that anger so long into adulthood, I had to like teach myself how to forgive her for that. And so anyway, most of my childhood I was shuffling around, and I stayed with my grandma, and she was an abusive alcoholic. And I'm real, very vulnerable. And I think everybody should have that strength to stand up and to admit their past, because it doesn't dictate who we are. It's the choices that we make and what we choose, right? Mm. And so that being said, like while I was dealing with my grandma, I was also dealing with my alcoholic grandpa, who actually like molested me at one point. And that was crazy because it didn't really come out until I was about 17 or 18. And, telling my family that and seeing how upset and really not understanding it as a kid, it took me a long time to process that. And so kind of fast forward into, my high school career, I was always like a standout athlete, but, not having that structure, I didn't really go to school. Like I went to school to play football. I played football from 6 to pretty much my sophomore year in college. And I always felt like it was a way out. I knew I was passionate about it, but I think I did it more so because I always saw, the greats online, like, hey, this got me out the hood, the NFL thing. So it was always something that I fell back on. So I've been an athlete my whole life. And, it was just something that drove me through. And I remember like even in middle school, high school, I would always go to practice. And looking back, I never understood I had that drive just to go. Like in high school, I didn't even really play. All 4 years, I just kind of sat on a bench because I couldn't keep my grades up. But I would always go to practice, sun, sleet, or slow. Like even if I didn't play, I remember in middle school, I played a little bit. And so in high school, this was the point I was like kind of staying with my uncle, still getting shuffled around. And I remember at 16, I was getting into it with my uncle. We didn't see head to head, and I like ran away. And he was like, we just didn't get along. And I ran away. And I remember I would just go to school just to eat lunch with my girlfriend at the time, and then I would go to football practice. And so I did that for about 2 years. And did this in Oklahoma. I was born in Texas, but I was always kind of back and forth. But Oklahoma was my home. And it got to a point probably close to my junior year, still shuffling around. Like at one point I like slept in a drainage gutter. I was sleeping with cousins, just anything, but I was still going to school because like one, I wanted to see my ex, and two, like free lunch, right? Like that was like the best time. Like I would miss first and second period, but I would never be late to lunch. And I would always go to football practice, and that was kind of hard for me because I remember like me and the coach, like I remember one time at camp, I actually got kicked out the camp because I was hitting too hard. I played linebacker, and that was kind of when I first noticed like my talent. Like, I spent all this time practicing. Like you always have to practice in life, and I was really great at practicing because that's all I did. I didn't play in no game, but I was great at practicing, right? And the coach was just like, dude, like, you're not going to play. You can't keep your grades up. And I remember being so upset. And at this time, I was still homeless, and he didn't understand what was going on. But of course, I took it out on him because I was just that angry kid, And at one point, I found myself staying with a roommate that was bipolar schizophrenic. And it was actually a scary point in my life because I didn't understand what was going on. Even though I had seen a therapist my whole life, I didn't really understand the concept of mental health. All I remember is that we got put in a situation to see therapists because my grandma would receive a check every month. Like that was my idea of mental health. Like you say you crazy and you get money, because that's where she told us. She's like, all we are was a check. And so during that period, it's actually kind of crazy. Is like I've always been a believer in God. he's always walked in and out of my life, but I knew he was always there. Like even now, I know my purpose and kind of where I'm at in life. And I would always go to church, and at this church, there was this guy, and he was a pastor. I remember him preaching so good. It was like Life Church in Oklahoma City, and like I wasn't so close to him. I have a twin brother, and I have a little brother. We kind of grew up together, and then I have an older sister. She actually lives in Atlanta, and a younger sister. But we were all split up. But mainly, it was me, my little brother, and my twin brother. And my little brother and my twin brother would always hang around with this pastor. They would go to his house, but I was just kind of a rebel in high school. I didn't care about anything. I was hurt. I had a chip on my shoulder. I was fighting everybody. And then, once I moved in with this guy that was like bipolar schizophrenic, I was scared. And so one day I actually called up my, now I call him my stepdad, which is kind of that weird vibe because even, growing up in an African American neighborhood and then transitioning to a white family, like it was still, I don't know if I'm uncomfortable now, but I always call my step-parents, stepmom, stepdad. Like I never called them mom and dad. I guess I was never comfortable. Even now it'd be weird. I think people like your stepmom and stepdad, like how does that work, And I was like, I don't know. Like it was just always that uncomfortability. But it was like once I made that call, I told him I was scared. He was like, look, I'll take you in, but you got to focus on your grades and you got to play football, like because you're already doing it. And so around about my senior year, because I didn't get to play the following year, I actually moved in with them, start raising my grades, and we actually had to apply for a hardship. And we had like the doctors, teachers, everybody in the neighborhood write letters to the OSSO so I could play another year of football. And it was like bittersweet because I actually got the recommendation for that. And so I ended up playing my senior year, and my grades were actually well enough that, I ended up going to like Northeastern Oklahoma, ended up playing for a JUCO, and then later transferring to Oklahoma State. And the thing about that is like a part that I don't really get to share, and I haven't said this on any podcast that I've been on, is like, and it's very valuable because I don't think you realize the skills you have in life until you kind of really just get that big perspective. But one of the things, I think one of my like really that made me ask myself like who I am is like, I've always had this crazy tenacity to take risks. And one of the biggest things is like, I got a scholarship out of high school. I only played 1 year, but in that time I was borrowing like my girlfriend's truck at the time. I was driving like all over the nation, like Kansas, Texas, Tennessee, giving people my tapes. And then eventually I got picked up by JUCO, and I had a couple of like smaller D2 schools want me too. And like, just thinking back on that, like really kind of empowered me. Like, I didn't know I had this ability to kind of create the outcome that I wanted. And like, of course, later on in life, I learned that. And so anyway, kind of fast forward, ended up going to Northeastern Oklahoma, and I transferred. I was still playing football, but there was just like this slight kind of difference, this unknown feeling of myself that like my performance just kind of died. It was like, I always tell it's like Space Jam, like somebody just took my juice and, stole it from the football or something, because dude, I couldn't run, I couldn't catch, I was slower. It seemed like coaches, because it's such a competitive level, like if you ain't never played at a collegiate level, like it almost seems like, I mean, you're against yourself, but you got the coaches, like, they're going to want to push you, but they're going to show you like who's kind of like better than you, And I don't think it's like intentional. It's just like, you're here, you got to make a name for yourself. And so that was always something. But anyway, at the time I was showing symptoms for kidney disease, but I didn't know it because I never heard of kidney disease. I didn't know anything about it. But looking back, I remember giving plasma, and one of the biggest signs of kidney disease is you're spilling protein. And I was like, people think, I still feel this size, and I'm nowhere near that big, but I was about 245 and I had a 595-pound bench. Like I was a big dude. Like I didn't have a neck for years. Like when I got a neck, I was like, oh my God, this is what people have. It was like a new thing to me. And it was so funny. I was talking to a friend today, and it was like, did you have a nickname in college? for play football, and my coach called me Robot. He was like, "Come here, Robot," because I was just like so stiff. I was that guy that like turned like this, and it was just like an amazing experience for that. I even got to do that, but it was very hard because like I had to give up football, and I felt like it was always my performance, but it wasn't me. And while I was in school, I was studying engineering, and actually took kind of like an internship with this small oil and gas company. They were a startup, and so I actually ended up working there for years. And at the time, I was doing some project management stuff, just kind of bouncing around. Like it was a new company. It started off with like 30 of us, and then it grew to like 200. It was actually, it was the best thing. And when I was working, this is probably around 2016. I'm not gonna lie, like the craziest thing. One day I was going to lunch, and I had a Carl's Jr. jalapeno bacon cheeseburger, bro. And I like tore that thing up, and I had these heart permutations, and my heart was just beating, beating, beating. And I was like, okay, like maybe I'm having a heart attack, maybe not. But I was like, I'll sleep it off because we weren't taught to go to the hospital. Like I'm a man, I benched cars, bro. Like, I didn't need to go to the hospital, and I didn't go. And then I woke up the next day to go to work, and it was just still going. I was like, boss, like I got to go to the hospital. And then I never knew that was going to be like the most changing moment in 2016 in my life. And I remember going in, and my blood pressure in this arm was like 256 over 148. And then in this one, it was like 98 over 67. And, they were actually getting ready to release me. And the doctor was like, wait. We need to do a kidney biopsy. And then that was in May of 2017, I found out I had stage 4 kidney disease. And at the time, I was very much an alcoholic. I was doing some illicit drugs, like just, really suffering from that depressive state, coming out of football and now finding out I'm sick. And I was like, I'm going to just travel and keep doing what I'm doing. And I didn't listen. And a year later, I went on to dialysis. And in my comedy, I educate people about this. Like, yeah, I like to give kind of a humorous way to it, but it's like very serious. Dialysis is very draining. I remember I would always like vomit all the time, feeling drained. It only actually took about 8 weeks, and I lost about 80 pounds, maybe like 2 pounds of muscle. It deteriorates your body so bad. And I was on dialysis for 5.5 years. And during that time, it was really hard because I was still battling that alcoholism, the drug abuse. And in 2018, my twin brother died at 29. He was actually shot. And it's crazy because I actually do make jokes about it now. I'm very good at like turning dark situations into like humorous things. But it was like one of the hardest moments of my life, like losing somebody that spent your whole life with you, and then one day he's just gone, And I think that was kind of like the turning point for me because I believe like through death, it can either break you or you can choose to prosperous and grow from it. And even though I didn't know at the time, I've always had the ability just to keep going. Like, I don't know why I keep going, but I think it was David A. Anthony that was like, sometimes you just got that thing. And I always had that thing, like just the ability to push through any situation, even if I don't want to, but I know like I just could never give up. And so about time 2020 hit and during COVID, transferring to 2021, I was homeless, hopping couch to couch. Wasn't really doing anything to my life, really just kind of depressed. And I was making videos on Snapchat and Facebook, and it got me about like 20,000 followers. And I was just telling dumb jokes about kidney disease, about how like if I had fluid retention and people see me in the club and they're like, let me get you this water, it would like kill me. And I was like, why are you trying to give me this water, bro? And it just kind of blew up into this crazy thing. And my sister was like, you should do stand-up comedy. And I was like, well, I ain't doing nothing, right? So I might as well just go do stand-up. And so I looked all over the nation, and Arizona was the only place in the nation that was doing stand up like in person. I knew I didn't want to do it through Zoom. And so January 21, I moved here, and it was funny because we actually went to JP's last night and did an open mic, but I didn't get to tell you, bro. It was actually the first place I did. I'm so glad I get to share this with you. It was the first place I did stand-up comedy. Like, I'm telling you, bro, I didn't do any like research. I didn't know that you had to hit an open mic first and then go to a show. I straight booked a show. And I remember going, this is that green room in the back, you know, where the bathrooms is at. And I was like, hey, you know, I'm doing comedy. And I was like, how long you been doing comedy? The guy was like 12 years. Another guy was like 14 years. And I was like, and they was like, how you know? I was like, it's my first day. I was like, you know, and dude, I was like so nervous. And the first joke I did, so when you might be able to see it, but I have a scar right here. When you're on dialysis, they install a fistula, and it had two aneurysms. It had two bumps because that's where they get it from, like poking in and connecting to the machine. And I remember my friend coming in one day and he saw those bumps. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, bro, like, chill. I just got the disease. And he was like, what disease? And started freaking out. And so my joke is I would put an alien up my sleeve. And then you seen the alien, right? Like it looked like two bumps and like the alien would jump out. What do they call them? Space grabbers? Like it was a little face grabber, you know? And prop comedy, am I right? And so I go on stage, I have the comedy up there, and I'm like, yeah, my friend was scared. And then I rip the shirt out, and then like the little face grabber falls on the ground. I was like, you probably thought it was an alien. Start cracking up, bro. And the thing is, I had like 5 minutes or 6 minutes or something like that. I ran off stage. I was so terrified. Like, you did so good. You stayed on stage. You fell out, bro. I ran off after one joke. And the mic was like, oh, that was Jazrome Coulter. And they like ran on stage because they didn't know. And I didn't know I was going to do that. And I was so embarrassed and I wanted to leave. But this lady came up to me afterwards and she was like, you got something here. Keep it up. Don't know who this lady is to this day. And after that, it just pushed me. And I was like, I'm going to do this.
Be a hero for animals. Join the Animal Alliance in our mission to prevent the unnecessary euthanasia of cats and dogs. Our spay and neuter programs are essential to saving lives. Visit theanimalalliance.org to see how you can contribute. Together, we can make a lasting impact.
And so I spent every day just working on comedy. And I remember there were days that I would do a show and I would do like 5-10 minutes and I was still on dialysis. And then I would throw up after the show, immediately get off the stage, not because I was nervous, but because I was so sick from dialysis. And then pretty much everything from there just seems like a blank, man. Like I end up getting on the news out here for ABC Family or ABC, whatever the ABC is. I'm sorry, I don't quote it, but with my first kidney foundation, 1 in 9. And, you know, they end up sharing my story. And then after that, just kind of got connected with a couple. This guy that was an NFL player, he really helped my career. I got connected with George Lopez and did some stuff with them. And then after that, I just kind of kept going and started working with like multiple kidney organizations. And even outside of that, lung, heart, cancer. And so here it is 3.5 years later, and I've just built my entire brand about mostly educating people about kidney disease and just trying to inspire people that, like, you know, no matter what we go through, you can use that to kind of excel yourself. And, you know, I will be that beacon of hope for people one day. And I think my why is just like, I don't want people to have to go through anything that I went through. And if they did, like, there's always a way out because we have that choice. Like, it's always a choice. Every day is a choice. But that pretty much sums it up.
Awesome. Well, I've got tons of questions because, I mean, just lots of questions about the maybe not so funny stuff and then some of the funny stuff as well. Yeah. Because I think that when we are able to take our trauma and turn it into happiness, that adds a lot of value into our lives. And there's always a piece of that we need to figure out. And so whatever that thing is that was traumatic and as a child, or could come in later. The trauma could come in later. How do we turn that into a positive? I was talking to somebody who may be helping me get on more stages in the corporate world. I saw you doing it and I saw other people doing it. I was like, okay, I've been public speaking for a long time. How do I get into more corporate perspectives and share this knowledge? So we're going through like, hey, what are the things that I could help somebody with? And it really comes down to what are those childhood, how do we reframe our perspectives into positive gratitude? And I would say gratitude is really a big word for me as well. Like I want to be grateful that I got to meet somebody, even that I got to meet you it's been life-changing. It's terrifying, but life-changing. I want to go for it. What were you going to say?
Did you watch that video last night?
Oh, dude, I watched it twice and I was like, it's so cringy. It hurts to watch it. Yeah, it hurts.
I get it because like I can't even stand watching myself. I'm like, why do people listen to this voice?
I watch a lot of stuff, and like even on this podcast, like I listen to my podcast a lot, so I have no problem listening to my voice. I got over that a long time ago. I have no problem watching video of myself. It is fascinating, just my skill set in a completely different environment. Like a good example of something that's just out of the blue is actually the people who sponsor our podcasts. Thomas Klein, he runs this nonprofit called the Animal Alliance. And when he asked me to sponsor it, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't actually like animals. Like, why would you want somebody who doesn't like animals sponsoring this Animal Alliance thing? He's like, well, that's okay. Because what we do is we actually provide the resources for people who don't have the economic resources or the ability, the knowledge, whatever, to spay and neuter their animals. So their nonprofit helps fund that process to depopulate animals. I was like, okay, well, I'm cool with that. Like less animals on the planet, that's probably a good thing for me. Less fur, less everything. But it's really not about that. It's about a more compassionate view at the world. But how do you take things that aren't typically connected and connect them? So if you want to learn more about the Animal Alliance, you can go to theanimalalliance.org and find out like, okay, why would Sam be connected with this? But think about your own life. What are in your own life do you think doesn't connect with your dream? What are you currently doing, your life experiences that maybe you think, how does that connect to my dream? And I think that's what's so great for me watching stand-up comedy over, like, I watch most of it on either YouTube or the Netflix specials. I think I'm going to start going more towards YouTube though, for like the 5-minute clips, because the hour-long programs, I don't think they're teaching me what I want to know. I mean, they do teach me stuff, but I want to go into the shorter form. But what can you do to like bring everyday experiences to life and find funny ways to describe them so that no matter what's happening in your life, even if it's a horrific, terrible experience, rather than crying through it, you can laugh through it. And I'm not saying don't cry. Crying's, there's lots of times when you're crying. But I want to get into some of this because you mentioned your family. You have a twin brother, sister. Do you have other siblings, or it's just the three of you?
So there was 5 of us total. So I have an older sister. She lives in Georgia. I have a younger sister. She lives in Kentucky. And then my little brother lives in Oklahoma.
Okay. And how close were you to all of your siblings growing up? Like how much of this life history, and when you're 16, you call your step parents and say, hey, I want to do better for my life. But up to 16, how close were your siblings? Were they all farmed out to different families, or were you always kept in a unit passed between aunts, uncles, neighborhood people, whatever?
Well, it was always just me, my twin brother, and my little brother. And even my older sister, like, she was with her dad's family growing up, like the Joneses. And then my little sister, she was just in a whole nother league. Like she lived in Kentucky her whole life. And it wasn't really until I believe 2013 where I actually drove out there myself and connected her with the whole rest of my family. Like I drove out there, met her for the first time. And then I drove her to Georgia to meet my older sister.
And did you all know about each other and just was geographically they were all staying with other parents, or?
We did, but I only met my sister once when I was 6 and she was 3. And so since then we reconnected. Jeez, when I reconnect with her, I don't know. Dude, numbers are hard, bro. But I would say she's 3 years younger than me. So, man, I don't think we reconnected until 7'8", 7'6", 5. Yeah, until she was like 25.
Okay, so more recent then.
Yeah.
That's really cool. So I guess I'm curious, like, how much does having yes, you have this generational trauma or generational addictions, generational issues going on the one side. How did that impact you as children? Did you all end up getting some of those habits, or was it like you had some, your brother had different ones, your sisters had different ones, or did you all kind of end up with similar traits that have needed to be overcome?
I think, as far as I know, because again, even to this day, like my older sister's life is still a very much mystery. I think my little brother knows about a little bit more than I am, but I know, as far as like the drugs and alcohol, I know that me and my brothers like at least experienced that. But my sisters, I'm not sure about.
Okay. So then what you move in with this other family. What was the main driver to move in with them? Like, or to get the help? Like, what was
it's sad to admit. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You go for it.
It's sad to admit, but it was just fear, man. Like, you waking up to somebody. I do a joke about it now, because I would like sleep at night, and I would wake up and he would just be standing over me, and I'd be like, "Hey, bro, like you go lock the door, make sure nobody crazy come in here," because it was just like one of those situations where I was just not aware of it, but it was just like I knew I had to get out of there. Like I just didn't know how to handle it because I never had a situation where somebody was like so aggressive and would switch it up, and it was really just fear. And I think it was just kind of God also like pulling me towards them because, they lived next to us for, I would say, a good 3 years. And I had never went to my stepdad's house, never really talked to him. My brothers and them were over there. And then just to like call them out the blue because he was like the only person I could really call. And then it was crazy because, I ended up becoming closer to them than, they did. And they spent more time with them, and I just kind of called them out the blue and they took me in. And it was just like, it was kind of just one of those things that were just meant to happen. But it was definitely just fear. Like I just I was back against the wall. I didn't really have anywhere else to go.
And what was did they have kids as well
They did. They actually had my stepbrother. His name is Caden. He was probably, I think about 3 when I moved in. Well, actually, yeah, he was about 3 when I moved in. And so, and they later had a kid, his name Crew. And Caden's like 18 now, and Crew is 12. 12. Geez, you get so old, dog.
Well, that's cool. I just know that, like, for me, when I was growing up, I ended up moving in. I was just talking to my wife about this actually, and my brother. We have 11 siblings in our family, and I grew up reading really old books like Louis L'Amour, Ralph Moody, like these Boxcar Children, Narnia, all this stuff that I know. But the thing is, like, often in these books at that time period, because that was a time period they were written about, there was a lot of parents who were either they had to travel for work and just like orphaned their children. My own grandpa, his dad basically abandoned him and his family and to go work. So they got put into the foster care system just so his dad could go work, because it was right around the Great Depression. Like, you got to do wherever you can to work. So anyways, it was a time period thing. Well, I grew up in that, reading those books, and I really valued the idea that I just call it, like, rather than a foreign exchange problem or concept, what if we had a family exchange program going on where we had, like, hey, all of us, we trade our kids around so that they can learn from their uncles and uncles, aunts, have that type of mentorship, go learn skills, go learn other professions. We have a ton of people in our family. There's no reason that we couldn't do that. And I was really grateful that when I was 10 years younger than my oldest sibling. I guess I am still. And when I was 14, I ended up going to live with my older siblings a few months out of the year, and I would work with them. I'd learned their their profession, construction, electrician. I would learn these things, and I valued that so much, being able to be led by other people, not just my parents. And so I'm now looking at my own children thinking, man, how can I create something like that for my children? How can I create a space? And maybe it's a little preemptive because they're 5 and 7 years old, but I'm already thinking like, man, I wish I could send my kids for a summer to somewhere, and I'll let their kids come stay at my house because I want that type of mentorship. So as you go into this experience with your step parents at this point, like, what did you feel like you learned the most from them as mentors that you were definitely missing from the other people in your life?
I think the greatest gift, and I've told my stepdad this, is like, it was his ability. Like, he's always, I mean, he does sales now, and he owns a couple of companies. He actually owns a medical sales company. But the thing he did for me the most was really just opening me up to the world. I was not the kid, like how we kind of instantly connected and we chatted up. I was not that guy in high school. My stepdad, like, even watching him learning how to communicate and how he talked to people made me want to kind of drive and communicate and kind of talk to people. Because I remember when we were in college, we had media day, and, coming from my stepdad being like that extrovert, eventually, like, I was the guy that would like grab the mic, never played, but like I'd be like, oh yeah, we had such a good game, and like I always had to be in front of like TV and have like all these conversations and be spot on. But like being in high school and that, really didn't have that friend group, and being like so like non-social, and then coming into that, seeing that, like, just teaching me how to communicate with people, and that was like so valuable.
Do you think at the beginning you were more communicating or sharing I'm going to use the word facade, but like a forward facing, this is what I want people to think about me, versus, hey, this is all the crap that's happened in my life? At what point did you become comfortable really bringing all of your history into the forefront of how people know you? Because when I first met you, I mean, a lot of your childhood and where you came from, that was all part of me first meeting you and us being attracted. Had you came and said, oh, I'm just this great person, and you didn't share all of your history, not that I wouldn't have had a fun conversation, but I don't think we would have connected the same in that experience. So where did you learn to like bring that forward? And was it hard at first to share about your brother being shot, your mom having those struggles, your grandparents having those struggles, like all that dysfunction is what a lot of people would call it, that helped create you? Were you ever embarrassed about it or sheepish about sharing that with the public?
Man, it was so, I mean, really just within like the last, I just turned 35 this year, and really my life really started to change when I found comedy. And I was not the person, like even my first year of comedy, like I wasn't really kind of woke to myself. Like, to be honest, when my brother died, yeah, I cried at the funeral, but it didn't really process, man. I think people handle grief in like, in their own ways, but it actually took about 5 years. And I think some of us, we call it an awakening, or we're more aware of like who we are and like kind of what we want to be. But when you spend so much time trying to be somebody else, or you're consumed by alcohol or bad habits, and you feel trapped within yourself, like you can't get out, and you feel like, oh, this is the only way, I'm gonna be this way forever, and then you break free from that. I think that was like really what like made me aware, where I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna be more vulnerable and start telling my story. So it really only happened probably about 3 years ago, where I felt safe enough, because it was just a point where 5 years after my brother died, I just broke down and cried for like a whole day. And it was so hard. And I just remember like, man, like, like pretty much like a week after he died, I had like sold his truck and bought a new like Infinity. I was like, what kind of person am I? Like, I should have probably kept that truck. But, I had fun in Infinity, so it don't really matter now. Like,
it's an interesting thing. Like, the guilt of being left behind, or and there's really no reason for the guilt that I've experienced. My little
Yeah.
sister passed away from cancer a few years ago, and it's an interesting. It's just fascinating. One, that everybody grieves differently, and grief is so unique, and there's no answer to it. And I don't think that America in general fosters an environment to process grief. Like, I don't know any more effective way of saying it, but I don't think as our culture is really focused on grief and allowing somebody to grieve without pandering to them, or because bad things happen all over. And the way to, at least for me, I don't think that the pandering to me would be the right solution, but acknowledging that I'm having pain is helpful. But pandering and trying to like, oh, there's pain, we need to solve the pain. I feel like that's a lot of what America tries to do, is try and solve the pain rather than allow the pain to exist and be there in a supportive role and not have to change the whole infrastructure of society because a few people experience pain. Now, it's not to say that the people's pain is irrelevant or unwarranted or discredited. It's just because there's pain and just because there's bad things that happen. Like, I mean, it's horrible. I think it's horrible that you were molested. That sounds like not a fun experience, right? And we should do everything in our power to, make sure that doesn't happen to another person. And at the same time, we shouldn't not allow people to have children. We shouldn't not allow people to spend time with their parents, their grandparents, their aunts, their uncles, right? Like there's ways to avoid all that by putting everybody in a jail cell and just never allowing them to interact. But like, we allow certain risks because of the benefit that comes from the positive side of it. We drive in cars all the time, even though it's a much more dangerous way to be than flying. Like there's all these things that could go wrong that we just accept in society because there's no more efficient way of doing it other than accepting it and getting on with our life. So it's not to diminish the tragedies, but how do we process grief? And it's a fascinating thing that I have not, I'm still like regularly in the process of my grief with my sister. It's like, how do you?
Yeah, it's still fresh, bro.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost 3 years.
Yeah,
it's definitely an interesting thing, but community can make that a lot better. How old were you when your brother passed away?
Dude, I was 29.
29.
So right
and how did you hear about that? How did you find out about that?
Dude, it was the craziest thing. I actually got a call. I mean, like, I don't know, man. I think everybody resonates. Like, me and my brother, we were just two different people, man. Like, he resonated more towards, hood side. I'm a little bit more whitewashed. Like, I like rock music. I don't know how to really explain it. Like, we were just two different worlds. Like, I was a rocker. He was like gangster rap, but at the end of the day, like, we had each other's back. Like, we were just two different parallels, bro. But we always had that brotherly love, And I don't know if that has anything with it. And I'm gonna get to my point here. It's just like, they always say twins have that unique feeling to know when something's bad. But I'm gonna just be honest. Like, I don't think, I felt that was something off, but I definitely felt the pain afterwards when I got that call from my little brother. And like, it was crazy. It was hard. I remember like tearing up my room, bro. I was so mad. And finding out that he was shot, like, I ain't gonna lie, I grabbed my Glock and I rode around town. Like, I was ready to, like, we was riding, bro. Cause I didn't, I was mad. I was pissed. And, it was just crazy. And I'm kind of curious about that. Like, cause I've heard like that twin situation there, like they feel something wrong, but I didn't feel that. But I don't think it made it any less, impactful. But I'm just, really like a curious thing, is it like, you have to have that in-depth emotional connection to have that? Or is it just something natural? Or do people make it up?
Yeah, maybe there's a little of all of that happening.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never felt any one sort of way when I've had bad things happen in my life or about life with others. But I do think that on a more positive note, I often call people and I'm thinking about them, and as I'm calling them, they're calling me. Or like I do think that there's something there in the universe that connects us all, and we can feel and we can communicate, and we know somebody's thinking about us. I do think there's a level of that energy transfer. Maybe it is strong. Like I know that does happen. I wouldn't say it happens very often in the negative sense for me, but very often in the positive love sense, or thinking about somebody, and then we end up calling each other or texting each other like at the same time. It's like, what the heck? How do we both know to call or text each other at this time? So there's something to be said about that.
The Animal Alliance is dedicated to ending the cycle of pet overpopulation and euthanasia. Through our spay and neuter initiatives, we make a difference. You can be part of this life-saving work. Visit theanimalalliance.org to find out how you can get involved and make a difference.
I would love to know if my ex is thinking about me. I'll call her so quick.
That's what you need to bring onto the stage. You know, that twin thing. I don't have it for my twin, but man, I wish I did, so I could suss out the whole thing.
I'll call it right now.
So let's go back. I want to get into, because I want to honor, not just your story there, but also this experience going through kidney failure, dialysis. Like that's a big part of your story, and more importantly than just your story, you've turned that story into serving others. You've turned that story into helping other people, not just find humor through the experience, but also like get educated, because there's a lot of people who don't know about.
Exactly.
I'm one of those people, so I'm going to ask a lot of stupid questions right now, or nosy questions, just because I don't know. But like when you you started to notice you were having issues with performance, and that kind of led to, okay, I'm having issues with the performance. I'm now spilling proteins into my plasma. So you have like a lot of these data points. What did you think was going on at that point? Like, did you have any premonition of anything that there was anything medically wrong with you, or you're just like, oh man, I'm sucking this season. I'm sucking these last few months.
So, I mean, they definitely say it's not associated, but I was definitely having a lot of back pain, and I don't know, they say it's not relatable, but it was just also something I'm suffering with. And I didn't really make it clear about the plasma thing. So whenever you get plasma, they make you take a urinalysis. And so I was leaking protein like in my urine. And when they told me that, I was taking a lot of protein, and creatinine was really big, in the 2010s. And so I was just like, dude, I take a lot of that. I can just cut it off. I can take a lot of protein, cut that off. And, that's the only thing I thought it was. Like, I never thought it was like, my kidneys were messed up. And the crazy thing is like, you think the doctor would have said something like, hey, bro, you should go get your kidneys checked out. But even you'd be surprised, like in the medical realm, that even some medical doctors aren't, up to date on the signs, man. Like, so it's not just you, like specifically, it's everybody. Like, it's just so untalked about.
Well, it's something that I don't ever think about. The only time I think about it is I help people get life insurance sometimes. And when I do, sometimes they have to do medicals, and sometimes it shows up. They're like, hey, why is there an elevated protein in their urine? I'm like, I don't know, let's ask, but I don't know anything about it. I just know like these are questions that get asked. So you start having this experience. Then you have the high blood pressure experience. You go in, find out you have kidney disease, but you're still kind of heavily using drugs and alcohol. What was from when you at what point did you recognize that you were following into the patterns of drug and alcohol similar to your past generations, like your parents, grandparents? And how long did it take you from the recognition that it was something that was more of a inhibitor in your life rather than, because there's a lot of people who are like, it doesn't bother me. There's nothing wrong with it. There's a lot of people who are still there. But once somebody recognizes that, hey, this actually isn't what I want to be doing with my life, how long did it take from that recognition to the point where, if not completely sober, at least you're like, you have it under control and you're not overusing anything?
Man, it took a while. The crazy thing is like when you have kidney disease and you're in dialysis, you suffer from fluid retention, which means your body can't like processed fluids possibly. Like it usually like causes it to swell up in your lungs or heart or even stomach. And dude, I realized I was an alcoholic when I would start on the weekend, I would drink and then go to the hospital Monday, get out by Friday, and then repeat it. It was one point in the summer of 2018, I actually went to the hospital like 17 to 26 times. And the last time my lung collapsed. And then even then I still kept drinking. And it wasn't until like a really close friend of mine, he was like, dude, and it was just so much love in that conversation. I never felt that to this point about my drinking. He was like, dude, you're killing yourself. And this was the guy that was like, he took me in, and I'm talking about was cleaning my vomit, was cooking for me because I was so sick. And he was just like, you're killing yourself. And it was like, he was like, look, I'll quit drinking if you do. And after that, like I was just pretty much like 6 years sober. And I kind of had already broke off from the drugs after my brother passed away. And so it was really just like 2018, 2019, after all that happened, I was just like, this isn't it. Like, it's just really killing me, you know?
Yeah, it's fascinating. I was talking to another friend about substances and how addictive they really are. And this is not, again, I have to keep saying these disclaimers because I'm not a medical doctor, so don't take it any which but it does seem that there's enough research to suggest that most of the things that we find, we say are very, very addictive, morphine, heroin, all these things, like there's enough studies actually in historicals that environment is more of the addiction than the chemical aspect of them. And so that's why I'm asking, like, what was the thing that changed? Because most people, once they decide, a lot of them actually can quit these things cold turkey. And the question is, are you quitting something or are you choosing a better life? Right? Are you choosing to have one objective or just choosing a better life? Go back to my friends at the animalalliance.org, right? What are they choosing? They're not choosing to like eliminate animals off the face of the planet. There's just certain areas of the world where there's so many animals that are being born because they're not regulated, it's not controlled, and they don't have the resources to spay and neuter them, that now they're overpopulated and they can't get the animals from where they are to the people who want to care for them. So then they end up getting euthanized or killed because they can't feed them. And so it's better than watching somebody suffer, right? So with that, that's how that works at the animalalliance.org. But if we're talking about our lifestyle, environment changes what is right or wrong. Environment changes how we behave in our lives. And so if you take somebody who's heavily addicted and you take them out of the environment of needing that emotional addiction, more emotional than physical, and you put them in a different environment where that emotional need is then satisfied, then they are no longer turning towards the substances as much as they're turning towards the emotional connection. And so that's a lot of people think the absence of addiction is just not being addicted. And really the opposite of addiction is connection. They're looking for a deeper connection. So that's what I was trying to understand. Like when you decided, okay, you lost your brother, that kind of cuts off the drugs. And then this guy provides a deeper connection to like, hey, your life has meaning far beyond the meaning you're assigning it right now. What if we did this together? Now there's a deeper connection, and maybe alcohol is not as tempting because it's not a question of like, oh, I really want a cold beer or I really want this, but can I get the connection and the emotional satisfaction from a different source than the alcohol? I'm just curious how much of that played into that, or if it's all hindsight now you can see it.
Man, I think it was, because I don't think I would have quit. It wasn't even for my benefit, really. It was more that I think I just never had somebody care enough, you know, to like really see me in that light, to like, hey, like you're killing myself. Because I'm not gonna lie, like I didn't have the support that I needed. Like during this stuff, like I had people in and out, but there wasn't nobody really holding my hand. I was still very much, even now, you know, I traveled 2 to 4 times a month. I've always traveled, even when I was like on dialysis. It was, by the way, the worst idea, bro. Like it was like one point I had scheduled out a 4-week trip where I was hitting like 5 different states, and I was hitting like dialysis units, bro. And then sometimes I would miss it and just be like throwing up, and I was so sick and have to try to like catch up in like one state. So I was always like, just doing like way too much. But man, like it really was the environment thinking it out. And then later in life, it was kind of like, I need to better myself. So I think we all kind of process everything differently in our own time. Cause it was definitely, I didn't do it. I didn't do it for myself. I didn't do it because I wanted to become a better person. I just did it out of love.
That's awesome. I love that. So I want to ask this final question. What was it like? Because now how many years were you on dialysis? About 4 years?
5.5.
5.5. What was it like when you got the call or however you were notified, knowing that, hey, we've got a kidney donor, they're gonna make your life transform again? Because you went from like having autonomy to being on dialysis for 5 years, like if you don't make it, you die, to you get a second chance at life. What was that emotion like, feeling that you're gonna get another chance at like really living? Because there's one thing about being alive and then there's living, and you're gonna get another chance at living. What was that like?
The quick version of it is the first time I got a call, I turned down the first kidney, and people didn't understand. But I found comedy, and I found out that I was getting my first gig, my first paid gig, and I was going to go fly out and meet George Lopez and all these things. And I was like, at the time, I felt like that was just like more important. Like me finding my dream. I know it sounds crazy, but me finding my dream and my person and chasing that and like actually having a meaning, like it was more important to me than getting a kidney. But like I knew in my heart, and I knew God, like I just knew it would happen. And so I had to go do these things. And so for 6 months, I told him to take me off the list. And so after I did all this stuff, I waited. And the first time I got the call, it took 2 weeks. And the second time I got the call, it was July 3rd, 2022. It's been 2 years, a little over 2 years since I got my new kidney. It was just like, the first time I was just like hoping and praying. And then I got that moment. And then I was just like, wait, it's not time. But the second time I was just like, I was driven, like I was waiting for it. It wasn't like, I don't know, bro. I felt like I deserved it. Like I felt like I worked hard enough that I deserved this kidney. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm so blessed, like da 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 da. It was like I put in the work, I put in my time, like I'm gonna get this kidney, And I just remember getting that call, and I was just like, I mean, going through that process is just unbelievable. And like now I have this second chance of life. And sometimes I forget, man. I feel so guilty because we kind of forget. And then I see people and they remind me, like a lady, I told my story today, and she like shared it on my Instagram, and like stuff like that. It just humbles me. And I have to remember kind of where I came from. And like, this kidney isn't mine, but I have to, use it for the right reasons.
Sure. I wonder, and I don't know that there's any way of finding this out, but I'm curious who got the kidney you turned down and what it meant for that person.
I know, because like they definitely gave it to somebody else, and like a part of me, I guess that was like me kind of validating. It's like, even though I didn't take that kidney and it drove a lot of people crazy, more everybody else than me, they're like, why? Nobody understood. But I was like, dude, somebody else's life was changed that night.
Yeah, like the ability to give somebody else a kidney, even though you didn't have any working kidneys yourself. I know that sounds weird because technically somebody else was actually giving the kidney, but it was still like yours to give, right? It was yours if you wanted it, and it was yours to pass on. They do all these Facebook reels and stuff where it's like, hey, here's $100. Should I give it to you? Do you want to take it, or do you want to pass it on to the next person and double it, and pass it on to the next person and double it? And it'd be great if that's how kidneys work, doubling every time they got passed on, but it's not.
Don't give me $100 straight up going in my pocket.
Yeah. So, anyways, it's just funny though. It's like that, and what type of good karma or good energy did that put out for you? Knowing like, I had a chance and I chose to do that. That's its own mindset, So like, that's a lot of different variations of growth and perspective that most people don't know that they have. I think a lot of people have the opportunity, right? Because it could come down to $10. It could come down to $100. It could come down to a loaf of bread. It could come down to the next person you see on the street who needs help, you have the option to serve. It could come down to a smile. Like, do you choose to smile at people or do you not choose to smile at people? And what could that smile do for that person? And you might think, oh, it's nothing. It's not a big deal. No, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It could make that person's day. It could keep that person believing that they're worth living. And it's so simple. These little things that we can do in our lives, they're part of our character and who we become. And it's up to us to determine to live our life on purpose and live our life the way that we want to, so we can be remembered that way. And I haven't ever had that opportunity necessarily. So this is kind of interesting. My sister, when she was going through her cancer battle, she needed bone marrow transplant. That was potential. That was going to be a potential way that she could heal herself. And out of all, so what's really uncommon, I was going to ask you this as well. We're out of time, but we're going to go over a little bit because I'm still curious. So with my sister, for bone marrow transplant, statistically, like 1 out of every 5 people or something is a match for a typical person. For my sister, her bone marrow, there was nobody in all of the world of databases that was 100% match for her. There was nobody. The closest match, or at least one of the closest matches, was my brother, who was 50%. Right. So it's still like, that's not very good odds, but it was 50%. And so then they were going to do this. So my before they can transplant it into my sister, then they had to pull it out of my brother. And so we all did our swabs, but I'll be honest, like, although I was putting my swab in to see if I was a qualified person, I was praying that I wasn't. Right? Like,
how painful it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, not because I don't want to help my sister, but like, I don't need anybody drilling into my back and sucking my bone marrow out, like, I love my sister, love her to love her. Yeah. But like, I was praying that wasn't for me, because I don't want to be that person who had to have that. My brother, he did it. They didn't end up using it. So that's what's even crazier, is like, they pulled his bone marrow out for this, didn't ever end up getting used for that. I'm sure it got used for somebody else. But like, think about, he had the option to serve. He served and he did it and he just moved on, and that, like, people have those options. I was going to ask this about you. Like, isn't it typical that in your family you'd have a match for a kidney? Like, did nobody in your family match your kidneys, or had they all just had other lifestyles that made it not safe for them to give you one?
Man, family is just, especially mine, is just like tough and complicated. And like, I can never know what truly, led them. But I do want to say a lot of the person that I was, like, I have mentors, and, one of them I talked to about, I was like, dude, you wouldn't have liked me 3 years ago. And I think it had to do with like what type of person I was, because I was just not a good person, like dealing with the drugs and then the trauma. Like, you just tend to get sucked into that, And I actually got kicked off like the transplant list twice in Oklahoma. And so I didn't get to tell that part. And so I think that's what kind of dissuaded them. And of course, my twin brother would have been a match, but, it's just kind of hard asking for that. And there were so many opinions there. Like, I just kind of left it alone, man. Like, even when, they were like, hey, you should put it out here to find a living donor, I just felt like, even in that, like, I was just kind of undeserving, even though I did find that life. But I want to backtrack a little bit real quick, because it was very powerful about, that 50% match thing. And then how you were talking about, if you pass it on, it kind of doubles. And it was kind of like a beautiful epiphany, bro. Like, I think when I let that other kidney go, I did get a double back, because the kidney I have now, it was from a younger donor in his 20s. And from 2 years ago, it's measured in GFR. And basically,
what does GFR mean?
It's your, oh my gosh, it's your glomerular filtration rate.
Okay. So it's how good it's processing stuff.
Yeah. So you have like glomerular glands in your kidneys, and they act as filters. So it measures that.
Okay.
And basically 90 and up, you don't have kidney disease, that's normal. And then 90 below, you pretty much have kidney disease or you transferring into it. And so pretty much when I first got my kidney transplant, my GFR was 53 on my new kidney. And now 2 years later, it's like 69. Like, it's very high. And it's just like crazy. And so that's why I was saying, like, man, maybe, you know, that was the blessing that I have like a really strong kidney, and it was a great match. It was a perfect match.
Yeah. That's fascinating. Well, I appreciate you hopping on here, Jazrome. Do you like Jazrome? Jazrome? I don't know how to say it.
Jazz like the music, Rome like the city. Jazrome.
Okay. Jazrome.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Jazrome, but that's a super Mormon way of saying it.
You can say it how you want to, bro. I get it.
It's just in Utah we don't. Anyways, I don't know why that matters.
Language. I'm gonna call you Sam because you earned that.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like inside joke.
Oh my gosh, dude, that was horrible.
Yeah.
I will not be posting that comedy skit, but honestly, by the time this show airs, because we're like 3 months away, there's going to be a lot more better ones out by then.
So. Oh yeah, no, you're gonna be killing it, bro. I like.
We'll figure it out.
You're made for this. I see it, bro.
Oh dear. Hey, well, thank you so much for coming on. Anywhere we could direct people to for if somebody wanted to donate to cancer research, to donate it to any of your nonprofits you're working with, just learn more about what's going on, or if they wanted to be put on an organ donor list or something, like, what's the best way for people to contribute positively to kidney things?
I mean, really just reaching, there's so many organizations out there, and, you know, feel free to reach out to me. My Instagram handle is AJ_Coulter2, or just Google Jazrome Coulter, Jazrome, last name Coulter, Coulter. And now I'm exclusively working with the Texas Kidney Foundation as a spokesperson for them. So I'm definitely kind of giving them more of my time. But even here locally, there's the Donor Network of America. They're always looking for people to check that mark on their license to become a organ donor. And I mean, NephCure, the George Lopez Foundation, AKF, like there's just so many, but really just kind of look it up, man. Look up any great kidney foundation. There's always people that need organs or volunteering. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate your time, and we'll have another one of these as we progress in my comedy career.
Oh yeah, let's do more comedy. Yeah, we'll do more comedy related. That'd be fun.
Okay. Hey, we'll catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show.
Every pet deserves a chance at life. At the Animal Alliance, we are dedicated to ending pet overpopulation through spay and neuter initiatives. Visit the Animal Alliance today to support our mission. You can help save lives and create a better future for our furry friends. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me, and if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.